To this now, it's been a busy year for the Democratic Alliance, who is the second biggest party in the government of national unity. From the internal squabbles involving the party leader John Steenhuisen and Dion George to the continued disagreements in GNU's biggest partners, ANC, over policy directions. Now, to reflect on the year, I'm joined by the DA spokesperson, Karabo Khakhau. Karabo, thank you so much for joining us, and a Merry Christmas to you. And I hope that this festive season has been a good one so far. And maybe let's just reflect on what has been good for the Democratic Alliance, just some of your wins in 2025.
Good evening, Katlego. Good evening to your Newzroom Afrika viewers. Thank you so much for having me. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all South Africans. So the year has been a very exciting year as far as our commitment to fighting for the people of the Republic is concerned. The first big win that we've noticed this year for South Africa was our fight against VAT, which had we not fought as hard as we did as the DA, even though we are in the GNU, we would have seen South Africans pay more for basic necessities such as food. And so that's a very proud moment for us that we were able to champion for South Africans. The second thing that we've also been able to do is the fight against the former Minister of Higher Education, Meno Buhlenkabane, which is led by myself and other colleagues within the Higher Education National Assembly Portfolio Committee regarding her CETA scandals, the appointments, ill-thought appointments thereof, of CETA board chairpersons, and obviously the Portfolio Committee's work to ensure that we get to the root of it. And we're also proud to report to the people of this country that the Hawks are still investigating that case currently, and we look forward to seeing the law take its course, because there are two offences. There are statutory offences, a statutory offence under the Powers, Privileges and Immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act 4 of 2004, as well as fraud, as we've been able to see about many lies that she told the Republic. But then, of course, we'll also have a new committee going into the new year that will be conducting direct oversight over the work of both the President and the Deputy President of the Republic, to have the two major Director Generals of this country for the first time in democratic South Africa appearing before Parliament like other Director Generals and ministers on how they are using the party's funds. So these are but a few. If I just name three things that we have been able to achieve, I could go on about how majority of the written questions given to ministers for accountability and on how they are aligning to their annual performance plans and how they're spending the South Africans' taxpayers' money are concerned come from the Democratic Alliance. Oral questions in the House as well as our participation in key debates such as GBV, such as the report on the G20, such as the Youth Parliament itself. Right. A number of conversations were had. So it's been a really good year for the DA, and our polls also indicate so. And so we also want to say thank you to the people of South Africa for their continued support to the DA, and will continue to fight for their best interests.
And the DA has also repeatedly dared the ANC to either change. You've threatened to leave the GNU a few times, yet you still remain within this coalition. Do you believe these threats serve more as leverage, or are these genuine ultimatums? How effective has the strategy been?
I wouldn't say they were threats. Look, when we entered the GNU, it was no secret that it is a government of political parties that have never agreed on everything in the past. We've been, as the Democratic Alliance, the official opposition for many, many years. And so it was, by virtue of the relationship that we've had in the past, a no-brainer that we're not going to agree on everything. And our commitment to the people of this country was we will be in government to serve and provide a better example of executive outcomes for the people of this country. But in cases where decisions that are taken do not make sense for the people of this country, we will dispute by all means. For example, again, VAT. There's no way in hell, if we took our oaths of service seriously and respected our commitment to serve the people of this country, that when we knew that fiscally there was money available somewhere that just needed to be moved and reprioritized efficiently and spent effectively and efficiently, that we would agree to a VAT increase. And so that's just that. And the fact that our polls indicate a bigger and growing support for the DA also indicates that the people of this country actually appreciate the vanguard that we are within the government of national unity. Beyond the squabbles also, what they also appreciate is indicators of government performance. For example, you look at Home Affairs. For a very long time, Home Affairs has been referred to as Hell Affairs, where nothing works in Home Affairs. But now we're able to reimagine a new Home Affairs with a digital atmosphere in line with the fourth industrial revolution as something that we're able to tap into. We've cleared backlogs that have been there for decades, sitting on people's tables without clearances, and we can finally be proud of that. The country has a serious problem with construction mafias. We're clamping down on that, and that's the DA's work. We've been able to break new markets of trade as far as our citrus industry is concerned. That is something that the DA has done that we wouldn't have been able to see before. We have a foot and mouth disease problem in this country that plagues each and every farmer, and for the first time we have a blanket commitment for immunization to make sure that cattle are safe, that farmers are able to put food on the table for themselves and their families, and that we as a country also get to secure our food in the country. I could go on with a list of other things that other ministers have done. Just one last example, we've been able to scrap the luxury tax on smart cell phones to make sure that technology and communication becomes more and more accessible to South Africans, not opening more markets and access to people who come from indigent households to make sure that they're not locked out of opportunities. I mean, there's a whole lot that we've been able to do in government, including, I could go on with Katlego, there's so much,
you
and that
certainly
just shows
can.
the power. Yeah.
But I think really what I want maybe to also just touch on, you speak of all of these policy disruptions, but I mean, the DA has introduced laws like the anti-BEE bill, and you've challenged policies like the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill. Do you see these as necessary reforms or just ideological battles? How do you reflect on your vision for South Africa's future in relation to these policies?
So the responsibility of Parliament and the executive arm of state is to continuously check status quo and see what works and what needs to be improved. As far as Bella is concerned, our contestation was very clear with just two clauses of the Bella Act itself, to say it is important for us to ensure that education still rests in the hands of families and households, parents particularly, and their space for ventilation being school governing bodies, that we did not want to see that power being stripped away from parents, because as the DA, fundamentally, we believe that even though government and teachers play an important role in teaching our nation, but parents at the heart are supposed to be at the heart of ensuring that there's checks and balances of the type of education that is. So that was just it. And then the second thing, obviously, with the Bella was the conversation around mother tongue education. There is international best practice all over the country, all over the world, that shows us that when kids learn, they learn anything, which is what we want. We want to be able to ensure that we increase our literacy and our numeracy competence across the board, irrespective of whether it is private school or school funded or public funded schools altogether. And so that was just it. And so it wasn't the case of us saying no to the entire thing. The same principles applies with the Expropriation Act, to say all we wanted to have is consistency with the Constitution, to ensure that in cases where the state wanted to take land for public use, that it does not disenfranchise anybody irrespective of the color of their skin. As far as BEE is concerned, our cry has been clear that we are not economically where we are supposed to be as a country as far as the enrichment of all South Africans, or the majority thereof. And it cannot be that when assessing how land is spread, how wealth is spread across the people of this country, that we still have a concentration on a few of them, and then in government's attempt of doing business with people, we don't expand it, we duplicate the concentration. where apartheid concentrated the concentration on Afrikaners mostly and white people, but in democratic South Africa, we concentrate the opportunities to politically connected elite people, your Edwin Sodis, your Ket Matlalas. Those are catastrophes that we cannot afford as a country and do not want, and want to make sure that people, more and more Black people and people of color, get to benefit from the state's finances and its policies. And that's just that.
I mean, there's been also just a number of accusations in general with regards to political fatigue and disillusionment of voters. What steps do you think the DA needs to take in order to renew that public trust and just demonstrate that you are a viable alternative to the status quo, especially with the local government elections that are around the corner?
I mean, there are two key things that we do. One is to govern to the best of our abilities and to outperform all our political competitors in the arena in terms of government performance. And we're doing that. There is no other political party in this country, and I say that boldly, that governs better than the Democratic Alliance. It's a fact. Whether it's local government, whether it's provincial government, or whether it is nationally, we're yet to see somebody that is able to put their money where their mouth is and be able to give honest reports on how they're spending the money of the Republic. That being said, it is also true that there's still much more that we need to do, because when you look at the ruin of apartheid and the ruin of colonialism, we're yet to catch up because those years have not matched up. But the bottom line is we're doing far better than all our competitors. So that's the first indicator to the people of our country that we care about them and that we respect them and value the commitment that we make to them as far as good governance is concerned. The second thing that we do really well and that we fight so hard for is our representation in opposition or in legislative arms of state, from council in municipalities to provincial legislatures and in parliament, both the National Assembly and the NCOP. We fight really hard to make sure that there's accountability. It is a known fact that every South African knows that they can trust that whenever there's an accountability conversation on the table, that the best vanguard available for them is the DA. We're so strict and so committed to doing it that even if we are in the GNU, we do not compromise on calling a spade and calling out corruption, fighting against fraud, and fighting against the misappropriation of public funds. So ours is to maximize, obviously, our amplification of the work that we do. And that's why we appreciate also the news and the media fraternity and its commitment to also helping South Africans have an opportunity to hear from us, as we're doing today, on what it is that we're doing for South Africans. But it doesn't just end there, Katlego. We also depend on South Africans to also take their responsibilities and their rights to public participation in politics very seriously. Because we could be having a chat today, but majority of South Africans could be having a lakapotsoi somewhere, December. Nobody really cares about these things. And there's an increasing lack of appetite for politics. And the only way our lives can be changed meaningfully, and the only way politicians can be held accountable effectively is if the people of this country become serious about the standards of public representation, and not only in observation, but in how they use their vote.
Most certainly, and I think what I was going to ask is really with the people of Tshwane, when you led that metro, the people of Nyanga, the Cape Flats, the people of Khayelitsha, would they agree with regards to the DA being above the rest when it comes to their competitors? Because many of those communities are still struggling, especially when it comes to those basic necessities and services that they need from the city that needs to be taking care of them.
No, certainly, look, there's still a whole lot that needs to happen in Nyanga. But as a person who grew up in the Free State, which is where I am right now, I can tell you there are many people who have pretty much traveled to the Western Cape, who have family within the Western Cape, versus and family here in the Free State and in the Eastern Cape. And they will tell you that the road network there is far better. Two, they will tell you that access to water is more stable than you would find ka hara Velkom mo Matjhabeng, where right now it is 1845. On an ordinary day, from 6 to 6, there is no water ka hara Thabong. It's a fact. You have to survive for Jojo. Number three, they would tell you about the quality of clinics that exists, public clinics that exists within all communities here. Hakia Bongani Regional Hospital there. Give me how fella you can't really get help there.
Right.
Whereas you have world-class health facilities within Khayelitsha. What we do need to crack down on as the city of Cape Town, and which is true, is human settlements. That is what our biggest problem is in the city of Cape Town, that we need to be able to crack down. And our ability to crack down effectively on the issue of human settlements depends on government and the people working together. A commitment to say you cannot build a house on land that is wet, that is not conducive for dwelling.
Of course.
That just can't work.
I need to let you go, but before you go, I just need to ask you this one last question. I mean, this is with regards to the elective congress that's taking place next year, April 2026, I believe. And of course, there's been a lot of speculation and there's been talk around your leader, John Steenhuisen. There's been issues of the use of party funds. We've seen some of that internal squalor. What do you think is going to be, or maybe the objective of your party leading up to that elective congress?
The DA's elective conference upon conference, or congress upon congress every 3 years is simple. Is to pave a way forward for the party, for the country as far as policy is concerned, but as far as leadership is concerned. The DA has not even opened up the race for nominations nationally. So once that opportunity happens, which will be next year within a few weeks, then we will be able to look at the political players who want to contest for what position. As far as I'm concerned right now, the leadership that was elected 3 years ago still remains the leadership that was elected. They remain in leadership. There hasn't been a motion of no confidence against anybody within the organization. As far as allegations are concerned, we have communicated in the past that there is an investigation that is currently underway to get to the root of everything that is happening and make sure that in line with who we truly are as a party, we will hold people accountable and will communicate transparently on what is happening. But what I want to communicate boldly to the people of this country is that there is no crisis within the Democratic Alliance. Our commitment to fighting against corruption, fighting for better service delivery everywhere across board, and fighting for the constitution of this country to be upheld for all South Africans remains steadfast, and nothing about that has changed.
All right. Karabo Khakhau, thank you so much for your time. I guess we'll still be in conversation next year when it comes to that elective congress for the Democratic Alliance. That's the national spokesperson, just reflecting on the year that was. Khotso Sello has a latest look at your sports in a short while. So